For most people working in San Francisco's financial district, Monday mornings were gray, heavy, and unforgiving. The glass towers reflected tired faces, and the aroma of burnt coffee mixed with the sharp scent of ambition. But not for Melissa Johnson. She had promised herself long ago that she would walk with her head held high every morning, even when her heart was weighed down, even when life tried to bend her into something smaller. She had another promise too, never to let a permanent frown etch itself across her forehead. Wrinkles, in her mind, were not the scars of age, but of defeat. That morning, as she sat at her desk on the 23rd floor of her office, the soft glow of her computer screen doubled as a mirror. Her reflection stared back at her, chestnut hair neatly pinned, steady eyes that tried to hide nervousness, lips pressed into a thin line before she forced them into a faint smile. She inhaled deeply, steadying herself. Today wasn't an ordinary Monday. It was a special day, one she had been dreaming of since James had slipped the diamond ring onto her finger 3 days earlier. Melissa glanced at the ring again. Its simple elegance sparkled beneath the fluorescent light, catching her breath each time it did. James wasn't wealthy, and the ring wasn't enormous, but the meaning behind it was greater than any carat count. For Melissa, it was proof that she mattered, that someone chose her, wholly and unapologetically. Her fingers trembled slightly as she reached for her phone. She knew this conversation would be difficult, but some things couldn't be delayed. She dialed her mother's number, already rehearsing the words in her mind. "Mom, I have something important to tell you." On the other end, Barbara Johnson's voice carried its usual sharpness, as though she was constantly speaking in the middle of a crowded room where everyone might be listening. "I'm busy right now, Melissa. I'm swamped preparing for Victoria Hilton's garden party. You know Victoria, she's the most influential woman in town." Melissa closed her eyes. She had expected this. Of course she had. Barbara had a way of turning even the simplest conversation into an ode to her own fragile social standing. Most influential woman. Melissa had heard that phrase so often it no longer held meaning. It wasn't about real influence or power. To Barbara, it was about rubbing shoulders with people who would make her feel important, even if just for a moment. "I understand," Melissa said softly, forcing calm into her voice. "But, Mom, I got engaged. James proposed, and I said yes." There was silence, a heavy, suffocating pause that stretched across the line. Then came Barbara's laugh, a cold, clipped sound that carried more judgment than amusement. "Oh, Melissa, to that real estate agent? You always sell yourself short. Look at Vanessa. She's dating a lawyer, a promising lawyer. That's what success looks like." Melissa lowered her gaze to the small succulent plant on her desk. James had given it to her when she'd landed her first big project at work. "A plant that survives anything," he had said. "Like you." "James is a good man," Melissa whispered. "I think I can be happy with him." Barbara sighed, a long, drawn-out breath that felt like a verdict. "Happiness is temporary, Melissa. I never thought you'd be the biggest disappointment in the family. But, well, it's your choice." The call ended soon after, but the words lingered like smoke in Melissa's chest. She sat there, frozen, her mother's voice echoing in her mind. Biggest disappointment. She'd heard versions of that phrase her whole life, but she had chosen differently this time. She had chosen James. That evening, as the city's skyline lit up with golden lights, Melissa found herself standing in front of her sister Vanessa's sleek apartment building. The lobby gleamed with marble floors, the kind of place that reeked of status more than warmth. She rang the bell, clutching her coat tighter around her. Vanessa opened the door with a wine glass in hand. Behind her, the floor-to-ceiling windows framed the glittering expanse of Manhattan. The view was breathtaking, but her sister's eyes were colder than the night air. "Engaged to him?" Vanessa tilted the glass, smirking. "You really have no ambition." Melissa stepped inside, glancing at the framed photographs of Vanessa's daughter, Sarah, displayed like trophies on the shelves. She sank onto the sofa, her fingers brushing against the edge of a frame. "I love James," she said simply. Vanessa laughed, the sound sharp and dismissive. "Love is just brain chemistry, Melissa. It doesn't last. Look at this skyline." She swept her hand toward the glittering city outside. "This is my love. This is what I've achieved, and I'm happy." Melissa watched her sister, whose beauty was undeniable, whose success was evident, yet whose tone carried a bitterness Melissa couldn't quite name. "You've always consoled yourself with that word, happy," Vanessa sneered. "But face reality. The man you've chosen will spend his life selling other people's houses. On the other hand." "I know," Melissa interrupted quietly. "You're successful. We hear about it every day." For the first time that evening, Vanessa faltered. Her smirk faded, replaced by something uneasy. "I didn't mean to hurt you. She hesitated, searching for the right excuse. "I just think you could do better." Before Melissa left, she held up her hand, trying to show the ring, but Vanessa only waved her off. "Show me later," she said, already reaching for another glass of wine. A few days later, Melissa drove down the coast to San Diego, where her brother Brian owned a small surf shop. The salty air clung to her hair as she stepped onto the beach. Brian, bronzed from the sun, carried his board under one arm. He looked like freedom itself, something Melissa had always admired. "Congratulations," he said, giving her a hug that felt more like a pat on the back than real warmth. "But honestly, I get what Mom and Vanessa are saying." Melissa's chest tightened. She stared at the waves rolling against the shore. "You too, Brian?" she whispered. He dug his toes into the sand, drawing absent lines with his foot. "Is there anything special about James? Anything that makes him different?" Melissa turned toward the horizon, her eyes stinging from more than the wind. "He loves me. Isn't that enough?" Brian shrugged. "Sure, but we're the Johnsons. We should aim higher." Melissa let out a bitter laugh. "The Johnsons." He said it as if the name carried royalty, as if they were more than middle-class dreamers chasing status through borrowed pride. But she knew the truth. Her family's ambitions were little more than illusions. Barbara had passed down her hunger for appearances, and her children had swallowed it whole, all except her. Melissa pressed her hand against her ring. It wasn't made of power, money, or status, but it was real, and maybe, just maybe, that was more than enough. "Tomorrow, we'll share the photos from your wedding," James said, his voice steady but his eyes searching hers, alongside messages about family bonds, including photos of a wedding where no family came. Melissa's fingers froze on the edge of the coffee table. She looked up at him, her chest tightening. "If that's what you want," he continued cautiously, "but if it's too painful." She shook her head firmly, though her throat felt dry. "No, that's important. By sharing the truth, we can give hope to others who are experiencing the same loneliness." James nodded, relief flickering in his eyes. He kissed the back of her hand. "Then tomorrow, the world will know." The next day, Hamilton Enterprises launched one of its boldest social media campaigns, across glossy magazines, business news portals, and their official accounts. The images appeared: Melissa in her wedding dress, radiant and calm, standing at the altar with James. But the photos carried something unusual. Unlike traditional wedding albums filled with crowded tables and family portraits, Melissa's pictures were striking in their emptiness. Behind her stood no family. The absence spoke louder than any decoration could. Alongside the photos was the message: family is not always defined by blood. Sometimes, family is the one who chooses to stand by you, even when others turn away. The campaign went viral within hours. Comments poured in, strangers, co-workers, even people across oceans shared their empathy. Thousands admitted they had faced rejection from their own families, finding in Melissa's story a painful but liberating reflection. Hashtags trended. News anchors repeated her name. Interviews were requested. Soon, Melissa's face and story were broadcast nationwide. The young woman once dismissed by her own family was now being celebrated as the wife of a corporate executive and a symbol of resilience. Yet the same spotlight that elevated her also cast harsh shadows on Barbara, Vanessa, and Brian. One morning, while sipping her coffee in her office, Melissa opened her inbox. The sender's name made her gasp: Vanessa. Her hands trembled slightly as she clicked open the message. "Dear Melissa, I saw your news recently. I had no idea you held such a position. Why didn't you tell me? I'm sorry about that day. I really was planning to come, but I had an important meeting that day. How are you? Looking forward to hearing from you. Vanessa." Melissa leaned back in her chair, rereading the lines, twice, 3 times. Then, a soft laugh escaped her lips, low and disbelieving. "A meeting?" The words twisted bitterly in her chest. On her wedding day, Vanessa had looked her in the eyes and sneered, "You'll probably be divorced soon anyway." Now she wanted to rewrite history. Melissa closed the email without replying. The following week, her phone rang. It was an old friend from her neighborhood. "Melissa, you won't believe it." The voice buzzed with excitement. "Your mom, Barbara, she's been gradually distanced by her friends since coming back from Paris. Everyone keeps asking her, 'I saw your daughter on TV. A corporate executive's wife? Is it true you didn't go to the wedding?' She can't even show her face at luncheons anymore." Melissa said nothing. She only felt a strange warmth spreading in her chest, not joy, not gloating, but something closer to release. Meanwhile, cracks appeared in Vanessa's carefully constructed world. Customers at the luxury boutique where she worked whispered behind their hands. Some asked bluntly, "Are you the sister of that Hamilton woman? Why didn't you attend her wedding?" Each question chipped away at her poise. Gradually, sales declined. The store manager, once indulgent of Vanessa's charm, began to watch her with critical eyes. Within months, she was dismissed. Her brother Brian fared no better. His surf brand sponsors cut ties overnight. A polite but firm email arrived. "We cannot maintain a partnership with anyone linked negatively to Hamilton Enterprises." Suddenly, the man who lived for waves and freedom was drowning in debt, sleeping on a friend's worn-out couch. Barbara, Vanessa, and Brian, once so proud, so dismissive, now found themselves cornered, stripped of the privileges they had clung to. One evening, Melissa's phone lit up. Vanessa's name glowed on the screen. Melissa hesitated, her heart pounding, but finally answered. "Melissa." Vanessa's voice no longer carried its sharp edge. Instead, it trembled with unease. "I saw you on TV recently. You're amazing. By the way." Melissa cut her off. "You thought my wedding would be a waste of time because I'd probably be divorced soon, right? Unfortunately, I'm still married, still happy. Do you need something?" Silence stretched across the line. "No, I just wanted to see how my sister was doing," Vanessa said, her tone forced. "Really? Or is there something you want from Mrs. Hamilton?" Melissa's voice was calm, but her words cut like glass. Vanessa didn't answer. The line went dead. Melissa placed the phone down and turned toward the window. The San Francisco skyline glittered as it always had. But she was no longer the same woman who once begged for her family's approval. She was stronger now, a woman who carved her own destiny. James walked up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist. "No regrets?" he whispered. Melissa leaned back into him, smiling faintly. "No, not at all. This isn't revenge, James. It's justice. It's the truth, finally spoken out loud." A year later, Melissa stood in the garden of their mansion in an upscale San Francisco suburb. Flowers bloomed in neat rows, a symbol of the life she had built from pain and persistence. She touched the petals absently, remembering the ache of her wedding day when her family's absence felt like a wound carved into her soul. That scar remained, but it no longer controlled her. James joined her, sliding his arm around her shoulders. "I was remembering what happened a year ago," Melissa said softly. He kissed her cheek. "You've become so strong this past year." Melissa nodded, eyes fixed on the horizon. "Yes, but sometimes I wonder how they're doing." James hesitated. Then, with a quiet, almost guilty smile, he said, "Do you want to know? I had them investigated, for your peace of mind." He handed her a folder. Inside were reports. Barbara had been forced to leave her elegant apartment, now living in a single cramped room. Vanessa drifted from one job to another, unable to hold a steady position, now renting a shabby flat in a forgotten town. Brian's debts piled so high he had no choice but to couch surf, his once carefree spirit hollowed by failure. Melissa pressed her forehead against the window pane, the chill sinking into her skin. "So much," she whispered. "Just as you intended," James said gently. His words carried no accusation, only truth. "They hurt you. Now they're facing the consequences." Melissa closed her eyes. "Is this what I wanted?" "Only you can decide that." He took her hand and kissed it. That afternoon, while she was reading in the garden, the caretaker approached nervously. "Mr. and Mrs. Johnson are here to see you." Melissa's breath caught. She rose slowly. "Show them in." When she stepped into the living room, she saw them, Barbara, Vanessa, And Brian. But they were shadows of who they had been. Barbara's once styled hair had gone white, her proud posture reduced to a stoop. Vanessa's beauty had dimmed. The lines around her mouth betrayed bitterness and sleepless nights. Brian stood thin and weary, the golden glow of his surfer days long gone. "It's been a while," Barbara said, forcing a smile that trembled at the edges. Her eyes, once brimming with superiority, now carried something closer to fear. "What a lovely home." Melissa stood tall, her expression calm. With quiet dignity, she gestured toward the chairs. "Sit down. Would you like something to drink?" "No, that's fine," Vanessa said quickly, her voice tight. Do you have some business here?" Melissa interrupted, smiling politely. Her tone was gentle, but her gaze, sharp, unyielding, made all three of them shift uncomfortably in their seats.